Welcome to today's Qualified at the Intersection. So there is always so much going on, but first I want to remind folks that I'm doing my Friday Live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time because I have a special guest, Felicia Scarpati-Lomax. She is an amazing thinker and writer. She talks about our ancestors, our healing, what it means to be a biracial Black woman in this world. She brings the mystical and she brings the ancestral. And so I think you're going to really enjoy that live tomorrow, but it's going to be at 3 Pacific time. So, one of the reasons I'm doing this workshop on why we talk about race or racial literacy is an example came up today, and it was, of course, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as you know, posted the derogatory video last week about President Obama and his wife, depicting them as animals. And this is a long historical trope in American history to refer to Black people specifically as monkeys or apes. It is justification for enslavement, justification for abuse, justification for murder and experimentation, because we weren't human, so you could, do the same things you would do to an animal to us. What was interesting is Donald Trump did a classic defense today, which is, I have Black friends. I know Black people. And he did that by posting this video that's included in the newsletter below, where he has video of him with Black people. He's with Michael Jackson. He's with Oprah Winfrey. He's with Snoop Dogg. He's with, Black people primarily in the 80s and 90s. Not a lot of super recent stuff, but he found celebrities, put it together and put it on his Truth Social. And he's been posting this. And this is to be proof that he's not racist. And from a racial literacy perspective, this is often a trap that white people who don't actually have Black friends, don't actually know Black people in a real way fall into. People will feel defensive and they will say, well, I have Black friends, I know Black people. And what I often tell people is if you actually have a real Black friend, you wouldn't say you had a Black friend. You would have probably not behaved in a way that caused you to have to say that, because a lot of people will say they have a Black friend, and my question is, has this person been in your home frequently? Is this the person you call in the middle of the night when things are bad? Does this person, do you know their family? Do they know your family? Have you been to their home and just sat around and shot the shit, that kind of thing? And really, people can't say that. They have an acquaintance they know who is Black. They have somebody they know in social circles who is Black. But let's keep it real. Most of us don't have a ton of friends. So, real friends is kind of rare no matter what racial group you're talking about. And what we know from our data, and it's something I talk about in my book, is that white people's friend group circle is overwhelmingly white, like in the high 90s. Whereas Black people's friend group circle is a bit more integrated in the low 80s or high 70s is their friend group is Black. Whereas white people are in the high 90s. White people actually don't know any Black people. They actually don't have Black friends. And when the reason people go, roll their eyes when they hear that is because it's a defense to your lack of knowledge by pushing your relationship with Blackness forward as some kind of barrier. And it's insulting because we all know that most people's friend groups are same race, and that when people say that, they're not talking about a real friendship. A real friendship is one where you would know enough about Black people at this point that you would know not to say that. Like, seriously, if you really had real Black friends, you would know that that's a racial trope, and you would know that that's not, even people who say, like, I was married to a Black person or my children are biracial, that doesn't mean that a person can't still harbor race-based and racist ideology. We go back again to slavery. We had people on plantations, their children were enslaved by them. They had raped the enslaved women, had children by them, and they enslaved their own children. So it's not like, literally their child was mixed race with Black, and they changed the law so that the child was Black and not mixed race. Like, we have this history of this. And so, and when I think about the South during, after slavery, after Reconstruction, during Jim Crow, which I always have to remind people, Jim Crow functionally existed, if not exactly in the law, in everyday life up until I was born. The final vestiges of Jim Crow were legally removed in the late 60s, okay? So in the South, there were black and white people who had good relationships. You know, they would call black people aunt. That's where we get Aunt Jemima, and uncle. That's how we get Uncle Ben. They wouldn't call them Mr. and Mrs. because those were honorifics reserved for white people. So they would get around it by calling them uncle and aunt. That's actually one reason why I don't like this whole trend. This is a side story, but with young black people calling all black women over 40 auntie. Like, I'm not your auntie. I'm the auntie of my niece and my nephews, and that's it. You know what I mean? And historically, auntie was a derogatory way in the South to get around calling black women Miss and Mrs., to not give you your honorific. But I digress. So in the South, I would think a lot of people during Jim Crow, from the end of Reconstruction in the 1800s all the way up to 1968, would have said they had great relationships with black people. They knew black people. I'm comfortable. Black people are comfortable with me. They like me. They didn't know a damn thing about the people. They did not know that the people they were interacting with were presenting a face to them, a face to protect themselves from danger. You know, one of the Jim Crow laws was that as a black person, you could never display an intelligence equal to or exceeding a white person in public spaces, right? You couldn't tell a white person they were wrong or something of that nature. This was part of Jim Crow etiquette and part of laws in some states. And the penalty could be, you could be killed ultimately, right? So black people developed coping mechanisms to deal with white people, which involve yes and master. And according to white people, oh, they're so simple. They were the simple ones. They did not know that black people were putting on a play, a puppeting life play for them to make their lives just function in a, you know, we were captured, and we were in a terroristic environment even after slavery. We were captured by terrorists, right? So anything we did that would upset the order could be dangerous to us, dangerous to our physical safety, our economic safety. And so black people developed coping mechanisms in dealing with white people where they just never said a true thing to white people, because they knew that talking to white people in any kind of humanistic way, like I don't like this, don't do that, could get them injured. White people, conversely, in the South and some in the North too, assumed that was black people. They were so naive. They thought they were dealing with the real face of the people they were dealing with, and they were not. And so they would have said, I know black people. You know, I know I have black friends. Even the same people who would go out and hang black people as part of the Klan with their robe on felt they knew black people, felt they had friends. And many of the people felt that the people who worked in their homes, who took care of their children, who cleaned their houses, they were their friends. They had no sense that that unequal balance meant they could never be friends, right? That's like a hostage and the hostage taker. We're not friends. That's Stockholm syndrome, if you think that. Or it's like somebody who has a child who they've abused. They don't like you. They have no choice. And so they would have black people in their homes, and they would, oh, you know, we're friends. We're good friends. You're not friends. These people were never talking to you in a way that was real. And so Donald Trump evidences this whole psychological story where white people are missing that their interactions with black people frequently are not actual friendship, mainly because black people still to this day don't feel safe having a real conversation with white people, where white people might be indicated in some way. There could be work percussions, mostly now economic, not as much physical, but could be, especially if you're dealing with police or ICE or something like that. But mainly economic consequences for black people having a real conversation. So Donald Trump's video showing him with other wealthy black people who, in the situations he is in, especially in the 80s and 90s, he was like a sort of celebrity, and they're, you know, shooting. That's not your friend. That's somebody having a relationship with you that is public, that is economic. You don't really know those people. You know, Donald Trump is a person who still believes in eugenics, which is a Nazi theory of racial purity. No matter how many black people he shows in a video, those are not his friends. And the reason saying I have a black friend is so offensive is it's what you call in the law de facto, meaning on its face proof that you actually don't have any black friends. Because anyone who has black friends doesn't have to say it. They are about it in their behavior and their activities. And that's what's so insulting about this video Donald Trump posted. And this is why I created, why we talk about race, or racial literacy, because I think really digging into the history of some of these things and having this open conversation and figuring out, like, why is this a problem? What is the cure for this? And how do I have authentic conversations that allow me to say, I don't know. I want to know. I think some of these things are similar, but I might be wrong. My goal with the workshops that I'm launching is not to lecture at you, but to have a conversation and to actually give you some tools. And I'm excited to say that people have started signing up already. And a couple of the questions people had is, what if I'm not available March 15th? It's going to be taped. It's going to be available for you to watch, so you can still watch that. And it's going to be available for 60 days after the end. I'm going to send out a scheduling note for the second session to try to make sure as many people can be there live. But of course, that will also be taped. But in addition to that, you're going to get full access to the e-learning. It's an online training that you can take on your own as part of this called Why We Talk About Race, and that's pre-recorded for you. So my whole goal is to get people past saying things like, I have black friends, and actually having black friends, and actually having relationships and being able to have these conversations in a way that matters. So yeah, you can take a look at the crazy video he posted in the newsletter below.